They didn't call a press conference. They didn't post a statement on social media. They didn't leak it to journalists or let it quietly die in a congressional inbox. They hand-delivered it, a private, urgent, coordinated warning, signed by Ford, signed by GM, signed by the unions, signed by suppliers, signed by the people who collectively keep millions of Americans employed. And they sent it straight to the White House. And the message inside was essentially 3 words: do not blink. Because if President Trump makes one specific decision in the coming weeks, one trade move, one negotiation, one open door, the people who built this country's automotive backbone believe it could trigger a collapse they are not sure they can survive. Not a slowdown, not a restructuring, a collapse. And the thing that's terrifying about this warning isn't the drama of it, it's the specificity. These aren't panicking amateurs. These are the executives, economists, and union leaders who have watched the global auto industry for decades, who have been in the room during every crisis, every near miss, every moment this industry almost broke. And they are more alarmed right now than they have been since 2009. The question is, why now? Why this decision? Why this level of urgency? Because the answer to that question leads somewhere most people aren't expecting. It leads to a $10,000 car, and to a country that has been quietly preparing for this moment for 20 years, while America was looking the other way. If you've never heard this story told the way it actually happened, stay with me, because this one doesn't end where you think it does. And if this is the kind of hidden, high-stakes storytelling you come here for, subscribe now, because what's coming next in this series will hit even harder than this. But first, let's start at the beginning. Picture this: a room full of lawyers, lobbyists, union leaders, automotive executives, and congressional staffers. Not rivals, not competitors, people who, in almost any other setting, would be fighting each other over market share, labor contracts, and legislative priorities. But on this particular day, they were all sitting on the same side of the table, because something had united them, something powerful enough to put old rivals in the same room with the same message. The letter they submitted to Washington wasn't soft. It wasn't filled with the usual corporate hedging and diplomatic language you'd expect from billion-dollar companies trying not to offend a sitting president. It was direct. It was urgent. And to anyone who understood what was actually being said between the lines, it was a warning shot. The message, simplified: do not open American roads to Chinese-manufactured vehicles. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because if you do, the damage may be impossible to undo. Now, to understand why that message carries so much weight, you have to understand where Detroit has been for the last 20 years. Because this industry has already survived one near-death experience. In 2008 and 2009, the American auto industry collapsed so completely that it required a government bailout just to stay breathing. GM and Chrysler didn't just struggle. They went bankrupt. Factories closed, towns hollowed out, hundreds of thousands of jobs vanished almost overnight. And it took years, painful, grinding years to rebuild. Detroit came back. Slowly, stubbornly, it came back. But the people who were there for that collapse, they've never forgotten what the edge of the cliff feels like. And right now, they're saying they can see it again. There's one number at the center of this entire story. And when you hear it, everything else clicks into place. $10,000. That is the approximate price of certain Chinese electric vehicles currently being produced and sold in markets around the world. Not stripped down, uncomfortable, barely functional economy cars. We're talking about modern vehicles, touchscreens, decent range, air conditioning, connectivity features, cars that look, at first glance, like something you'd seriously consider buying. $10,000. Now compare that to the American market. The average new car in the United States costs well over $40,000 right now. The average electric vehicle costs even more. And despite years of promises that EV prices would come down as the technology matured, they haven't come down nearly fast enough for the average American family. Monthly payments are at historic highs. Interest rates made everything worse. Millions of Americans who wanted to buy a new car in the last 2 years simply couldn't afford to. And into that exact moment, that window of maximum consumer pain, comes a vehicle that costs a fraction of anything currently on an American dealership lot. Do you understand now why Detroit is panicking? It's not philosophical. It's not ideological. It's arithmetic. Because if a Chinese automaker can sell a car for $10,000 and still turn a profit, and American automakers are losing money on every EV they produce, then something has gone very, very wrong in the competitive equation. And the uncomfortable truth is that Chinese automakers didn't get here by accident. They got here because they built something American companies still haven't been able to replicate: complete end-to-end control of the entire supply chain. They mine the lithium, they refine it, they manufacture the battery cells, they build the software, they control the chips, they own the factories. And they've been doing it at a scale and speed that left Western competitors standing in the dust, still arguing about which direction to run. Here's the real question, though. Would you buy a $10,000 EV? Be honest. Drop a yes or no in the comments right now, because this question matters more than you might think. Now here's where the story twists. This is the part that doesn't make the front page. This is the part that's been quietly building for years while everyone was focused on the headlines. Most people assume that because Chinese cars aren't widely sold on American lots, America is somehow insulated from Chinese automotive dominance. But that assumption? It's dangerously wrong. Because even if Chinese brands aren't in every dealership, Chinese parts are already under the hood of a significant portion of American vehicles. Batteries, wiring harnesses, chips, touchscreen components, rare earth materials used in motors and sensors, supply chain threads that run so deep into the global auto industry that pulling them out entirely would take years and billions of dollars. When industry analysts started mapping the actual origin of components inside American-made vehicles, what they found was quietly alarming. The car might say, made in America. The factory might be in Michigan or Ohio or Kentucky. But the deeper you trace the parts list, the more often you ended up in China. This isn't a conspiracy, it's economics. For years, Chinese manufacturing offered the best combination of price, scale, and speed. American companies, under pressure from shareholders to cut costs, followed the money. And now, the supply chain is so deeply intertwined that some experts openly say complete decoupling from China in the auto sector may be functionally impossible. Not difficult, not painful, impossible. At least not without years of preparation, massive government investment, and a complete restructuring of how American auto supply chains operate. And here's the part that should make your stomach drop. While Detroit was building those supply chains into China, China was quietly using the revenue, the technology transfers, and the knowledge gained from those partnerships to build its own fully domestic industry. They learned, they scaled, they improved, and now they're producing the competition. That's not bad luck. That's not a surprise twist. That is the result of a 2-decade strategy playing out exactly as intended. But the truly unsettling question, the one nobody in Washington wants to answer out loud, is this. Did America wait too long to notice? Which brings us to the man at the center of the storm, Donald Trump. Because whatever you think of his politics, whatever side of the debate you're on, the decision in front of him right now may be one of the most economically consequential choices any president has faced in the modern auto era. On one side, Detroit, the unions, the manufacturers, the entire ecosystem of American automotive production, employing millions of people, anchoring entire states and economies. They are begging for protection. They want tariffs. They want barriers. They want time. Time to retool, to reshore supply chains, to close the cost gap before Chinese competition arrives in full force. On the other side, the American consumer, the family that hasn't been able to afford a new car in 3 years, the young couple choosing between a used vehicle with 200,000 miles and a monthly payment they can barely survive, the single parent making the daily calculation of whether this car makes it another month. For these people, a $10,000 EV isn't a threat. It's a lifeline. And Trump, a politician who built his identity on fighting for the forgotten working American, is being asked to choose between the American worker who makes cars and the American consumer who buys them. That's not a simple calculation. That's a genuine dilemma. And the wrong answer could cost him politically in ways that are hard to overstate. Because if he blocks Chinese vehicles entirely, he protects Detroit's jobs, but he also locks tens of millions of Americans out of affordable transportation for years. And if he opens the market, the price disruption would be immediate and enormous. Consumers would benefit in the short term, but American factories could face a wave of closures that would make 2008 look manageable. This is the corner America has quietly painted itself into. And the warning letter from Detroit is essentially saying, we know this situation is complicated, but please don't sacrifice us before we've had a chance to fix it. What would you do in that position? I'm genuinely asking, because this isn't a situation with a clean answer. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate is splitting people I respect right down the middle. Now, here's the part of this story I didn't expect to be telling. Because if you go back 5 years, just 5 years, there was a car company being openly mocked by industry analysts, tech journalists, and EV evangelists alike. They were called slow, stubborn, out of touch, behind the curve. The company? Toyota. While Ford was announcing all-electric futures. While GM was pledging to go fully EV by a specific date. While every major automaker was racing to electrify their lineup and capture the narrative of being the future of mobility, Toyota sat back and said quietly but clearly, "We're not sure the market is ready. We're going to keep investing in hybrids." The internet laughed. Analysts downgraded them. The coverage was brutal. Toyota was framed as the company that refused to evolve, the Kodak of the automotive world, too attached to the past to see what was coming. Except something unexpected happened. The EV revolution didn't arrive on schedule. Charging infrastructure remained patchy. Range anxiety stayed real. The electricity grid in many parts of America turned out not to be remotely ready for mass EV adoption. And consumers, given the choice between an expensive electric vehicle with real-world limitations and a modern hybrid that offered excellent fuel economy without the compromises, started choosing the hybrid. Toyota's sales didn't collapse. They surged. While Ford was writing down billions in EV losses. While GM was quietly scaling back its electrification timeline. While startup EV companies were shutting down or merging in panic, Toyota was posting profits, selling hybrids, meeting consumer demand that the rest of the industry had decided didn't matter anymore. The company everyone called too slow had turned out to be something else entirely. Patient. And in an industry reeling from overinvestment, overcorrection, and overclaiming, patient was exactly the right thing to be. But here's the uncomfortable follow-up question that the Toyota story raises. If the EV transition is slower and harder than the industry promised, and Chinese automakers have built their entire competitive advantage around cheap EVs, what does that mean for the threat level Detroit is actually facing? Because this is where things get really genuinely complicated. For a long time, Wall Street treated the EV transition as a foregone conclusion. The story was simple. Internal combustion engines were dying, EVs were the future, and whoever got there first would dominate the next century of automotive history. Investors poured money into EV companies with no revenue, no product, and no factory, simply because they had a compelling deck and a story that fit the narrative. But somewhere in the last 18 months, the mood on Wall Street shifted. Quietly at first, then louder. Because the numbers started telling a different story. EV adoption rates were plateauing in several key markets. Automakers were reporting losses, not profits, on their electric lineups. The infrastructure investment required to actually support mass EV adoption was turning out to be far larger and far slower than anyone had modeled. And then China entered the conversation in a way that couldn't be ignored, because suddenly investors were looking at American automakers and asking a very pointed question. If you've spent billions building EV capacity, and Chinese companies can produce EVs at half the cost, what exactly is your competitive moat? That question didn't have a good answer, and when Wall Street asks a question that doesn't have a good answer, what follows tends to be brutal. Stock valuations started reflecting uncertainty. Analysts started revising projections. The confidence that had surrounded American auto stocks just a few years ago started giving way to something more cautious, more anxious. Because the scenario playing out was something investors hadn't fully priced in. Not just Chinese cars competing in global markets, but Chinese cars, cheap, connected, increasingly well-made Chinese cars, potentially arriving in the one market American automakers had always been able to count on as home territory, America itself. That scenario, once considered almost hypothetical, was starting to feel less hypothetical by the week. And behind the investor concern, behind the Detroit letter, behind the Washington anxiety, was a question that nobody wanted to say out loud, but everybody was thinking, what if we've already lost the cost war? And we don't even know it yet. But there's one final layer to this story. One dimension that takes everything we've discussed and magnifies it to a scale that goes far beyond industry competition or consumer prices or Wall Street returns. Modern automobiles are not just transportation. They are computers. Rolling, connected, sensor-laden computers that collect data constantly. Your location, your driving behavior, the roads you travel, the places you stop, the patterns of your daily life, mapped, time-stamped, and transmitted. And Washington's concern, a concern that crosses party lines and has found rare bipartisan traction, is this. Whose servers does that data go to? Because if Chinese manufactured vehicles, running Chinese software stacks, connected to Chinese cloud infrastructure, start operating in significant numbers on American roads, then the question of data privacy stops being theoretical very quickly. This isn't alarmism. The US government has already begun investigating connected vehicle technology from Chinese manufacturers. The questions being asked aren't about fuel economy or crash test ratings. They're about surveillance, about data sovereignty, about whether a foreign government could, through the vehicles its companies manufacture, quietly build the most comprehensive real-time map of American infrastructure, movement patterns, and daily life ever assembled. And once you hear that framing, the warning letter from Detroit reads slightly differently. It's not just about jobs. It's not just about market share. It's about who gets to own the technological infrastructure of American mobility and what that ownership makes possible. This is why the conversation in Washington has escalated so fast. This is why the letter had signatures from groups that would never normally agree. And this is why Trump's decision, whatever it turns out to be, will carry consequences far beyond the auto industry. So here we are, the most powerful auto industry in human history, The one that mobilized a nation in World War II, that built the middle class of the 20th century, that still employs millions of Americans from Michigan to Texas, is sitting in Washington asking for help. Not because they gave up, not because they stopped trying, but because the competitive environment shifted in ways that no single company and maybe no single country was prepared for. China didn't beat Detroit in a fair fight. It built a completely different kind of game, with different rules, different timelines, different access to capital, and decades of strategic patience. And now Detroit is looking at a rival it can't undercut, in a product category it bet everything on, in a market it assumed was safe. The warning has been sent, the decision is coming. And whatever happens next, whether Trump builds higher walls, opens negotiations, tries to thread the needle somehow, the global car industry will not look the same in 5 years as it does today. That much is no longer in question. The only question left is who comes out on the other side still standing. And maybe the strangest part of this entire story is that we're still at the beginning of it. The warning has been delivered, the pressure is building, but the decision hasn't been made. The consequences haven't fully landed yet. And the next chapter, whatever it contains, is going to move fast. So I want to know where you stand. Should America close the door completely on Chinese vehicles? Protect the workers? Protect the industry? Take the short-term pain? Or should the free market decide? Let consumers choose, let competition drive down prices, and trust that American ingenuity will find a way to compete. Drop your take in the comments. This debate is only getting louder. And if this kind of deep dive storytelling is what you're here for, subscribe right now. Because the stories coming next are going to hit even harder than this one. The auto industry is changing faster than most people realize, and you'll want to be here when it does.